Are you satisfied with your understanding of sustainability? If you are not, imagine a journey together, a pluralistic one, with academia, innovators, startups, NGOs, all looking for solutions to the greatest challenge of our time. My name is S.1.E.2, and this is the Sustainability Journey. Welcome to this new episode. Today we are going into the mobility sector with a startup that has a disruptive business model. Through servitization, they want to reach zero impact for personal mobility. As you can imagine, the list of honors is big. They have been awarded the Outstanding Contribution for Motor Innovation by the Royal Automobile Club. They are pioneer in circular economy and hydrogen. They are emerging innovator with the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, and they are within the best 100 disruptors by Disrupt 100. Today, we have the commercial manager of Riversimple-Julia Chesney-Roberts. Thank you, Julia, for being with us.
Hello, Sam. It's a delight to be here.
Thank you so much, Julia. I'm very happy to have you here. Mobility is the sector where is still 97% fueled by oil. So that is where, we really need some solution and innovation to really go towards sustainability. What is Riversimple about, and which is your idea?
Okay, so Riversimple is a sustainable car company. We have pioneered a hydrogen-powered vehicle and the business model to bring it to market. We focus really on sustainability. You mentioned our purpose statement at the beginning there, which is to systematically eliminate the environmental impact of personal transport. And I think that's it really. It's systematically because we've got to keep on going at this. This is a problem that needs to be looked at and sort of dealt with. And eliminate means that there's no, we're not room for sort of less unsustainable. We're not interested in that. We want fully sustainable. Obviously personal transport, which is the mobility side of it. The thing about Riversimple that's a little bit interesting is that we're interested in sort of what we refer to as whole system design. And the key here then is to look at everything rather than just looking at specific individual components or aspects of the business. We've tried to look at the whole system. So on that design theme, there are sort of 3 levels of design. So if we start technically with the vehicle itself, we focused on creating a highly energy efficient vehicle, which is, in our instance, is a hydrogen-powered vehicle. And I'm sure you'll have some questions on that in a moment. But the hydrogen vehicle side of it is because hydrogen's light as a component. And it means what we can do is rather than try and fit in with these new technologies, try and fit it into an existing construct, if you like, from the transport sector. So, a typical vehicle framework. What we do is we built the entire vehicle around the powertrain, in this instance, hydrogen. So it's what we call clean slate, starting from a clean slate and designing it in that instance. So we've managed to create a vehicle that's incredibly lightweight by also using carbon fiber. We've got things like in-wheel motors. We've got supercapacitors. We've got in-wheel braking. So we've got lots of exciting things that actually allow us to create this vehicle that is extremely efficient. It can do 300-mile range, which is something that's more accustomed to an ICE, so an internal combustion engine vehicle like petrol or diesel. The key for us is actually, like I said, energy efficiency. So it's got 250 miles per gallon equivalent, which I don't know if you've looked at your vehicle recently. Hey, my car is about 46 miles per gallon. That's in a typical petrol car, and it's a small Mini. So 250 miles per gallon is equivalent. It's something that's really quite an exciting metric to be chasing. So that's what we're interested in. So we've created it so that it is completely different. So we've got this really clever vehicle. We're trying to design it to be circular, based on circular thinking. So not the traditional linear of make, use and dispose, but circular, whereby you design it differently. You make it using minimum resource, you use it for a long time as possible, and at end of life, you capture as much as possible. So that's what we try to incorporate in the actual technical side of our business. And we believe we've cracked it with what we've done in the technical aspects here. We're using a very small hydrogen fuel cell. And again, this is around energy efficiencies. So if you look at other hydrogen vehicles, for example, like the Toyota or Hyundai, they've got fairly big hydrogen fuel cells. And that's, like I say, because they're using existing structures. We've created it completely differently. So in doing so, it means that we can change the way that the vehicle would normally run. So we've got this energy efficient vehicle, and that's one level of design, which is the technical side.
Which is the second step then?
And the next bit then is the business model. So you've created a vehicle, and rather than selling it, we're selling the service of the vehicle. And the reason for this is because efficiency is at the heart of what we're doing. So if you create a vehicle normally and you want to sell it, your drivers are to sell more of that or to sell in the after sales market. So you're constantly incentivized to use resource. That's not, obviously, if you're an environmental business, it's not what we're in the game of. Moreover, it's not aligning you with your customer either, because what your customer doesn't want is to be constantly sold something or constantly be given components in the after sales market. So if you sell a service, what we can do is we can build a different car, which is why our car is designed in the way it is. It's designed for a long life. It's designed using minimum resource as possible and maximum resource conservation and low running costs, all those things that are great for us, because actually we benefit because we own the car. You don't own the car, you use the service. So we can amortize the cost of that vehicle across its lifetime, which if we take the Riversimple Raza, which is our entry vehicle, then actually that car is anticipated about 20 years. We expect it to be slightly longer, actually, but because we want to make sure it's realistic for people and people can get their head around what we're doing, we've sort of simulated against 20-year lifetime. And then at end of life, what we can do is take those components, because all that life, we've got it for the whole time. So at the end of life, it's not a lost vehicle that's out somewhere we don't know where it is. We can capture the value there. And it becomes actually for us, that's actually a resource that we can put back into our business. It's not a negative, it's a positive for us. So everything that you're doing, it changes the incentives and how you behave as a company, what you're trying to do, aligns you with your customer, with the environment. And we actually believe it will be more profitable. So that's that second level of design.
And what about the third one?
And finally, for us, it's the governance, which is probably more my passion here. But that's the piece that brings it all together. So we're talking about looking at how you run your business and why you run it. So we don't, in a traditional business, you would have an investor, a financial investor, who would give money into the business and then actually have quite a strong say in how that business is run. And what that leads to is short-termism in terms of decision making. And of course, a focus specifically on profit over, perhaps in some instances, or to the detriment of, if you like, for the environment or community or what have you. What we've done is we've created a multi-stakeholder governance system. So we actually have our key stakeholders as a business, which includes environment, community, staff, commercial partners, investors, and customers. So that's all 6 of them. And they all have an equal say in our business. So when it comes to strategy and our, what we're doing and how we're running our business, they all jump on board and have an equal say. They have to balance and protect those interests. So they've all got benefit streams that they have to balance. And that's interesting because, again, it changes the way that your business is run. You're not focused on the short term. You're not focused on specifically making profit. Now, of course, you need to make profit. You need that resilience of profit for the business, for the longevity of what you're doing. But nevertheless, it's not the only driver. So that means you can balance it out. So you are looking at long-term objectives. You're looking at things that balance all these stakeholders for the benefit of all, which we believe will, if you like, grow the pie for all and actually make it better. So it's those 3 levels of design which have a huge impact on the way that we've shaped our business.
Wonderful. I think it's very, very good. So you have the 3 points. I think you have made the wonderful 3 points. That is the fuel. Then you have the business model, which is not the traditional one. And then you have the governance. Let me ask you a question with the first one. We have a lot of debate about hydrogen. We talk about, in the news, there is Tesla versus the others, Nikola and everything. Why you choose hydrogen and which are the advantages of hydrogen compared to electric vehicle? Can you explain this? Because I think there's a lot of confusion.
Yeah, there is a lot of confusion, I would agree. So let's start off with the very basics. So hydrogen and battery are both electric vehicles. So you are dealing in electricity in both instances. And they're both the ways of storing electricity. So you don't dig electricity out the ground, you're storing it so that you can use it in the vehicle. So you've got battery or you've got hydrogen at the moment, and there are other alternatives as well. The first thing I would say is that actually we need both. Like anything, what we're trying to do is decarbonize as fast as possible. There's an application for both. We need both. They have different uses, and obviously you can use them in different ways. And I think that's what's important, is to understand what you're trying to do with the vehicle that you want to use. In our instance, the reason we've chosen hydrogen is because it's incredibly light. So light weighting, as they call it in the engineering side of things. Light weighting is important because that then has a huge impact on efficiency and energy efficiency. For the range that we're accustomed to, which is, say, circa 250, 300 miles, then actually battery isn't necessarily the best application. And the reason we say this is because a battery can take you, if you're talking about short range, it's incredibly efficient battery and much more efficient than hydrogen, those short range journeys. But what you need to do with batteries is you need to put another battery on in order to extend that range. But batteries are heavy. And so in doing that, what you're doing is you're increasing your range, but you're also adding weight. So what you end up doing is the more batteries you add, the more weight you're carrying in order to take you further. In terms of, if you look at the graph of efficiency, it sort of drops off a cliff after a certain range, which we think is about 100 to 120 miles. It starts to become very difficult because you're constantly adding these batteries just to carry the weight, if you like, to carry, yourself that further range. Whereas with hydrogen, of course, it's incredibly light. And in fact, in that sense, you can actually, you can go a lot further on a fuel cell that's, tank of hydrogen. So you can have that in the car, you can have it bigger if you wish to, but it's light. So that's one area of it I think that's important.
And which is the other area?
We're looking, like I say, whole system designs. We're not specifically focusing on one particular element. We are a sustainable car company, not a hydrogen car company. So if, for example, something came along, a new powertrain that was even better than hydrogen for the application that we're looking for, then we would absolutely switch to that. We're not married to hydrogen. We're married to sustainability. So if we do that, we would switch to powertrains as if we needed to, because we're systems integrators essentially, and that's what we'll do. But for us, for the vehicle that we're building, what we're trying to create here, then actually hydrogen's the best output. Equally at the moment, end of life for hydrogen, for the components, we can reuse and repurpose them best than you can at the moment, as I understand, for battery electric. But again, there are advances in all these different things. Battery, is coming on leaps and bounds. Hydrogen has come on leaps and bounds in cost. We know cost reduction is one of the big things people say about hydrogen is it costs a lot of money. And yeah, it does cost, more money, for example, at the moment than battery. But that's not to say that it will continue that way. Battery electric, the first land speed record was done with a battery electric vehicle. So this technology has been around for a while. Hydrogen is fairly new, on the other hand. So, we're working towards that. But this isn't a either or. This is how do we get both of them up there? Because we're going to do more if we have both of them available to us. And we, choose the application that we're trying to do and we help enable it. If we enable both these technologies, we'll be in a much better position. If you look at electric battery, like I say, if we try and put everybody, there's like 32 million cars in the UK, for example. If we try and put all of those cars onto electric battery cars, we've got a problem. And that's this sort of unintended consequence you've got to be careful of, I think, as well. And hydrogen's the same. You've got to be careful of what you're trying to do here. You've got to look at the whole picture. So if you are taking a battery electric vehicle, your use of things like cobalt, use of copper, etc., you're using serious amounts of the world's production for that. And the Natural History Museum has actually come up with some really quite astounding figures for that alone. And that's just that. But then if you're looking at things like renewables, perhaps you'll need to have more wind turbines. Again, you're using more resource. So it's about understanding how you can balance that out as appropriately as possible. So it is actually a mixture of these technologies. It is a mixture to make sure that we can make the right decisions and suitable decisions that aren't going to be dangerous in the long term. We're trying to, decarbonize straight away. Battery electric technology is considered more available right now, so people will jump on that. But battery electric, for example, doesn't take account of people who have off-street parking. A third of the houses in the UK don't have access to that, so charging is more difficult for them. That means they're charging during the daytime, perhaps, or doing longer journeys and charging during the daytime. That's a huge peak in demand again. You're spiking on the electricity grid, which is quite an ask. If you 32 million cars suddenly jump on that, our electricity grid in the UK, it isn't made for that at this stage. What was great about battery electric vehicles initially was that they could stabilize the grid at night. So you could, trickle charge over the night, which would stabilize the grid, which was fantastic. If you're now switching that and having these cars, some can charge at home, but if you're doing longer journeys, there's quick charges, and it just changes what you're trying to achieve. And again, you need to just think about the right technology for that application.
I think you have given us a good panorama of the reasons. I can summarize here. It was the difficulties. Hydrogen is light, more range, and then also something about the life. This is taking me to the second question, because that is where your business model is. You're not a company that wants to sell cars. You're not going to the traditional model, but you're going to service. Can you explain better that? How is it working? Where do you get the value? And if I want to get a car of yours, I will be paying you. Which is your revenue model?
Sure. So you're right. It's a sale of service model, or mobility as a service, depending on who you talk to, or even servitization. There are lots of different names for it. And all of that means that rather than actually sell the product to you, we will provide it in a different way. So it's a full service model. So we sell mobility, which means that we will provide you with the car, but also will provide you with the means to access fuel, insurance, maintenance, servicing. What we don't want you to have is a hassle-free full service offering. That's what we're trying to provide you with. So, you'll take the car for a 1 to 3 year contract, for example. You'll contract directly with Riversimple, and you'll take the car, you'll pick up the vehicle, and off you'll go. And if you need to refuel, you'll use the hydrogen refilling station that you'll be captive to, because it's a local vehicle, I should also highlight. So we've created our entry vehicles local. And the reason for that is around hydrogen filling stations, which I presume is one of your questions later on. What we're trying to do at the moment in the UK, for example, there's sort of around about 20, slightly less than that, 20 hydrogen filling stations at the moment. Now there's a growth plan for more of those, and the same, Europe's looking pretty similar in terms of their rollout of hydrogen. So we're still a bit short in terms of, bringing in sort of mass rollout of hydrogen. So what we've developed is this local vehicle for local use. And the idea of that 300-mile range that I talked about earlier wasn't so much that, you drive one direction for 300 miles. It's so that you can fill up your vehicle once a week, perhaps if you use 300 miles during a week or twice a week, what have you. So it's a local vehicle for that reason, so that what we can do is we can build this sort of skeleton of an infrastructure without having to gamble with this nationwide kind of infrastructure side of things. So that's not something that we have to then foot the bill for, or indeed the government. But what we can do is create a business case for each of these hydrogen filling stations. Because again, different to battery electric, it's not like you have to charge for half an hour. A fill with hydrogen is about 3 minutes. So actually, it's much more akin to what you're used to with petrol or diesel vehicles. So if you're parking up and you're filling up for 3 to 5 minutes, then you'll just drive off with a Riversimple vehicle, because, your fuel's covered, and it's a monthly bill that comes out at the end.
So how do you pay for it?
And a bit like the old-fashioned telephones, they used to have a sort of telephone bill and a sort of, minutes. If you recall, back in the day, they'd split it slightly. At the moment, we're looking at that. We're trialing our vehicles at the moment, so we're testing out the different payment methods. But there's an operational fee which covers the vehicle itself, your sort of general wear and tear and maintenance and the like. And then there's this other cost of mileage, which goes into that as well, which is part of the whole fee. But, if you're doing more miles, obviously it's more wear and tear, so that also has to be considered. So those people who are doing less miles and more efficient pay less. Those people who are doing a bit more miles, it's still efficient on the whole scale of things, but you'll pay a bit more. So we wrap that all into a monthly fee, and then you pay direct again to Riversimple. And I think what's interesting in terms of I think you were asking then about our revenue model. It is very different, because actually now we're not talking about paying, selling you a vehicle and having a chunk of money at that point and nothing after, and perhaps some after sales market, which is what the usual car market captures about 40% of the revenue of a vehicle through its life. In our model, it's 100% because it's our vehicle. We have it the whole of its life. So that completely, again, changes the way that we drive this vehicle, how we use this vehicle, and how we build a vehicle. So all those things come together for us, and we benefit from the way that we've built this car differently. So, okay, it might cost a bit more in terms of components, but over its lifetime, we're able to reduce the cost and bring it to market at a cost that's equivalent to a normal petrol or diesel vehicle, which right now, although these things are more expensive, we're talking essentially about a supercar in the shape of a normal car for people to access, which, a normal hydrogen car, I think, starts about £60,000 sterling. I'm sure you can do the translations.
In US dollar, it's roughly 80,000.
So it's an expensive car. That's not something everybody can afford. So what we're trying to do, this isn't about having sort of super rich people being able to access efficient vehicles. This is trying to get this accessible and available to everybody. So what we're trying to do is bring it out in this much lower rate. So you're paying a fraction of that for a year or 3 years or what have you. And then at the end of life, you bring it back to us. We refurbish it, perhaps do a software update, and out it goes to the next person. And so on and so forth. So that 20-year life plus, depending on how this vehicle manages. And what's interesting about that, it changes the whole drivers of secondhand market. You're looking at a vehicle that's going to have reliability built in. You don't have to worry about that. If I was buying a secondhand car tomorrow, I think, oh gosh, is this car going to still function? Is it going to cost me a lot of money on maintenance? But you've got a set amount every month to pay, and plus whatever your mileage is. So you've got an idea of what, you can predict your costs through the 2 years of your contract, for example. I think there's some really exciting lessons and things we still have to figure out. From a revenue perspective, we're looking at long-term revenue, if you like. So obviously, like I say, 20 years of that, it's a trickle of income, but we believe it's eye-wateringly profitable later in life, but not immediately. This isn't a sort of tomorrow you're going to be rich. This is, if you look at our financial model, for example, we haven't done a sort of 3 to 5 year financial model. We've done a 20 to 40 year. In fact, I think they were talking about 60 years the other day. So, it's not that it's profitable by then, but we've just pushed it out that far so we can understand exactly what this business can do and how we can do it.
So which are the vehicles that Riversimple is producing right now?
Our first vehicle that we're going to bring to market, I think I've talked about, is the Riversimple Raza, which is this 2-seater vehicle. Tabula rasa, by the way, means clean slate in Latin. That's where the name comes from. And that's our first vehicle. Our second vehicle is going to be a light commercial van. And we think that one's going to be the one that really, I suppose, gets people's interest because it's that last mile delivery. So all those vans in town centres and things that are running around and can't perhaps afford the downtime, or they actually don't necessarily bulk out. So it's not a weight thing. Actually, they just need to move around quite a lot and fill up with boxes and things. So, they just need that sort of last mile delivery to get from A to B. And, hydrogen provides a great solution for that. After that, once we've got this infrastructure built out a little bit more, we can then talk about the sort of, the motorway capable vehicles, the 4-seaters, the 5-seaters, the family and the dog, and all those sorts of things that people want. But, we're not really ready for it yet. So we're just building ourselves so we can be, profitable at early point and have a capable and captive market and then grow from there.
What you said, it really triggered me my next question, the market. Given the limitation, as you said about the network of stations that is difficult, given all the other till the costs and your model, which is a bit different, what people are used, changing habits is a bit difficult. How do you market sustainability? I was reading interesting papers around it. Marketing sustainability sometimes can fall on the old concept of the 1960 myopia. We are focusing about how good is our product, but can be sold. How you overcome, because you are a startup that is really bringing a disruptive model, a disruptive innovation, which is at the early stages. And, it's really for people that really want to jump in something very different, which we are used, which is my gas, my station. How you really trigger that? Because I think that will be very interesting to understand from you.
I think it's a really interesting point, actually. And there are almost two sides to this because, as you say, we are a startup. So actually, we're not just trying to sell, if you like, the concept to customers. We're also trying to sell the concept to investors. So if I may answer on almost both sides, if possible. So with customers, let's start with them. So you're right. What we don't want to really be, we are obviously, sustainability is at our heart. It's what we do. It's, what we all focus on, and it's incredibly important to us. But we don't want this to be an eco guilt car. What you don't want to be doing is say to people, well, you must be sustainable, therefore you must have our car. We almost want people to love our car, and the fact that it's sustainable is a bonus on top. So that's what we're trying to get to. You're right, we're still a startup, we're still pre-revenue, so at this stage we haven't gone to market. So a lot of this is still learning, and we're currently building a trial at the moment, which will be running this year. So we'll be learning a lot of stuff about that. What we've learned so far is that the age range of people interested in our vehicle is across the board. Often with vehicles, they've got this sort of ideal consumer and they have this wonderful profile of the perfect consumer, and it's all down to their likes, their music taste, etc. We've got an entire different range of people that seem to be interested in our vehicle. They all drive completely different cars. Some of them drive little minis. This is a 2-seater car at the moment, don't forget. So they drive minis, some of them, all the way through to, sort of Range Rovers. And you're thinking, well, how could you replace your Range Rover with a 2-seater? But, you're right. We are having these early adopters, people who are interested in sustainability, and perhaps it's a second vehicle for them, so they can afford to downsize slightly on that rather than the first vehicle or what have you. But, a lot of these, I think we want to be quite clear that we actually are still trying to figure this out. Our customers are going to tell us what they want and how they want it. And I think what we need to do is learn from them. We're selling directly to people. What's interesting for us, if people are interested in our vehicle, is that we go ideally, either there's enough people to create a mass so we can put a business case together to put in a hydrogen filling station, or there's already a hydrogen filling station nearby. That's, I guess, the critical focus for us as a customer. You can be any sort of person, any kind of income, whatever, but that's how it will work. And like I say, we're trying to have this sort of this contract arrangement with our customers that isn't so, you're not locked into it in this horrifically long way, like, perhaps a PCP where you sort of feel locked in, or it's driven in a different way. That's a financial mechanism to push through the vehicles that are automatically being developed, if you like, from the big OEMs. We're not doing that. We're building only 5,000 vehicles in one plant per year. Scale of production is quantum less than these big organizations do. They push out hundreds of thousands per plant. We're talking massively less than that, but still able to make a profit because of it, because we're talking about something that we can scale. But we're not going to increase that plant. We're not interested in gigafactories. We're interested in micro plants, almost the opposite of the industry. And again, that's because we can raise finance around that. We can push that out in that way, and it allows us to be more flexible. So from one plant, we can produce some Rasas, some 2-seater Rasas, and some vans because of the same powertrain. So we can push those out, if you like. And then another plant might produce just the vehicle. So that's what we can do. And we can dot them all over the country. We got them in different places as well. So, in terms of customer requirements, it's not quite the same. We're not pushing out in the same way. Our model is different. So the customers can be whoever they want to be, I'm sure we'll look to target, and I'm sure we'll do some, big campaigns around marketing and the like. But in the sort of in the main instance, what we're looking at is if people that will love the car, and this is a fun car to drive. Electric cars, hydrogen or otherwise, tend to be quite fun. You put your foot on the accelerator and you go. It's not like a petrol or diesel. It takes a while for it to get there. It seems so much faster than it is because it's direct to wheel, and we've got 4 in-wheel motors, so that's proper 4-wheel drive, which makes it really exciting and fun to drive. So that's, I guess, the customer side of things.
By all means, Julia, also investors.
From the investor side of things, I think it's a lot of what we have to do is education. Actually, that probably sticks also for customer, because people don't understand hydrogen vehicles yet. That's still very new to them. Understanding how this technology can work and how they can adapt it into their lifestyle and what it really means. People are still focused on the battery versus hydrogen conversation. And that's really only, that's sort of, I guess, a bit distracting to what we really need to do here, which is to help decarbonize. So I think there's an education piece. Investors, I think a lot of them are really excited about what we can do. We're, a small company. We can go, so we're looking to launch in the UK in the first instance, but beyond that, we are open to working in different countries. Now, again, our rollout scheme for that is probably a bit different. So we're in the UK, in case you want to know, because, this is where we started out. We understand the infrastructure and the market. We know how it will work. If we go abroad, then we're looking at joint ventures there. We're not looking at taking our concept and assuming that we know what to do in, for example, Kenya. We don't know the market there. What we need to have is local players to be part of that and work with them. We've got some technology that we can bring to market, but ultimately they need to tell us what the customers are like there. They're going to be different to the customers that are in the UK. The vehicle will probably look very different. There's different requirements. And even the energy source that you use to make up hydrogen, you might have wind, or you might have solar predominantly, or you might have biomass. It doesn't have to be any one of those things, does it? It's about looking at your collection in your local area and how we can develop that. So, we're trying to be responsible in terms of what we deliver, and also I guess, thoughtful about what the country needs and what kind of cars and vehicles will be needed there for the people. But with investors, I think they need to buy into what we're doing here, because when you change the model from a product to a service, the way you're paid back is different. The way you have to invest is different. And that's still being played out, to be honest, Sam. So at the moment, banks haven't necessarily fully got into the circular economy side of it to understand the servitization piece that fits in. There's lots of regulations coming out now around circular economy. There's also talk about circular economy happening. But actually the drivers of the financial revenue and so on and so forth, and how they structure that, that's still being developed. We're working with obviously different organizations to see how we can support that activity. But ultimately we've done lots of modeling and it looked very profitable. And that's what we need to keep on getting across so people can put in the necessary mechanisms.
You are on a mission. Really, you have set up, every time I read that, the elimination of the environmental impact of personal transport, you have set up the bar very high, and you are doing it really in a disruptive way. Your business model, the way you're doing from the fuel, you are really different. I got a keyword from your answer. It was education. And I think now you have to educate. You have to educate the customer. You have to educate the investors. You have to educate the broader, stakeholders. The government to push towards, as for an example, to push for a network of hydrogen or other type of stations to foster. And I think there, the education side is what also makes Riversimple different, because I read about your circular economy center and that you did together, and since you are a leader of this center with the 2 universities in Wales. And I think there you are really, as you said, educate. How it's working? What is this center about?
Yes. So the centre is called Circular Revolution, and it will be based in Mid Wales, with us actually at Riversimple. It's supported, as you say, by Swansea University, which is in Wales, but also Exeter University, which is in England. They're both, really quite impressive universities that are based on circular economy. So their support and knowledge is coming into this into this operation as well, which is really exciting. The Innovation Centre has got sort of 2 aims to it. One aim is an outreach programme to businesses. And what we're doing in West Wales and the Valleys is where we're focusing that outreach, and we're working with them to try and look at their businesses, look at their products, look at their services, and see how we can circularize those as much as possible, so we can support them in developing what they're doing and how they can transition. So that's been led by the universities. They're working a lot on that side of things. So they'll be, developing that with the organizations, SMEs mostly, so small businesses. And then on the other side of things, we've got this really exciting research and innovation piece, which is now with Riversimple mostly as the case study in this. And we're looking at
how we can, with servitization, how we can develop that further. So as a business we've got servitization at the heart of it, or sale of service, then there are certain challenges that you face with that. And again, as you say, Riversimple, we're not doing things by halves. So, we're not only interested in providing the customer with a service, what we're interested in as well is taking that upstream into our supply chain, which again changes things. So just to be clear on that, if we're talking about, if you like, the fuel cell. So rather than just buy a fuel cell from a fuel cell supplier, we want to lease the kilowatt hours of a fuel cell from the fuel cell provider, who will then lease, for example, the membrane from membrane supplier, who will then release the platinum from platinum supplier. So that's interesting, because suddenly, rather than, if you like, mining platinum, then actually what they can do is have that on their balance sheet and provide it. So they don't actually have to continue mining. They can just lease that platinum out, which again changes a lot of the drivers of what we're doing and how we do things going forward. So if we have something like that, we can take that upstream. And again, they're then building a different kind of fuel cell. They'll be building something that lasts for a long time, minimum resource use, all those good things that we want to hear from an environmental standpoint, but also from a low maintenance and something that lasts a long time, which is great. So it's good for our customers and so on and so forth. So that whole sort of ecosystem isn't actually that, we haven't necessarily got all the sort of back end support pieces that we need to support that. So, essentially, rather than providing someone with a car, which is a product, we're providing a service, but behind that is a series of agreements, because again, we don't own the components within it. So, we need to work through all that stuff, which with our supply chain, they're part of it. We're bringing them on this journey, getting them to commit to this circularity if we can. So, that's a really exciting part. We're looking at contracts, how we can make them much more efficient, cleverer, smarter.
How do you integrate technology in your approach?
We're looking at how we can open source a lot of our technology as we go forward. That's been something that Riversimple is committed to from early days. And, we're now starting to really bring these on board and make these things happen. So, and the other thing is blockchain, which I know is quite a sort of interesting conversation at the moment around energy efficiency and how that works. But again, just to touch upon that very briefly, we're looking at this from whole system design. It's not about the individual component of blockchain. It's actually looking at what that does. If it decentralizes and digitalizes certain elements, it could actually be more energy efficient, for example, hypothetically speaking, than doing it in a different way. So we need to look at this. We're exploring it. It's part of our research. So it's not that one thing is good and one thing is bad. It's about understanding how you can build this entire system to make it as energy efficient as possible. You're right. You bring up our purpose. I mean, we're constantly driving towards this. So, we might not have the answer today, but we're going to keep on researching until we get the answers and keep on pushing forward.
I think, in summary, Riversimple is more than a car. From your discussion and a really nice conversation, you've given us a model. We started discussing a car, but actually we are discussing a new type of manufacturing, selling, and relationship with the suppliers, with the customers. It's really a transformational journey that you are embarked. I think that is why, and the recognition of disruptive startup and the role that was given you by the MacArthur Foundation, I think it's very, very interesting. I want to ask you one thing, since you are, I can say, a change maker in our environment, can you give one piece of advice for the change makers out there?
Oh, that's a difficult question. I suppose one of the things I've learned from Riversimple is that we're always taught, aren't we, that you should do things incrementally, that's how you should change things, look at them little bit by bit, change something tiny bit, see how that goes, and then go forward. And I think that probably works in a traditional environment where, you're not up against something like climate change. We're facing this crisis in a way that we've never faced anything before. So when you're looking at completely different parameters, you can't take the old advice. We're not there anymore. So I think for the 21st century, for where we are now, the idea that it's risky to change everything at once and is no longer applies. Now it's about doing everything you can, because one of the things that we say at Riversimple, less unsustainable is still not sustainable. So you've got to drive everything. The old system, trying to change the old system and work within that old system is actually not working for us anymore. So now you've got to break out of that and do things differently. And breaking out means, of course, doing more than one thing. You're changing more than one thing. So I think if I could provide any advice, it's that, don't be afraid to do something differently. If, you're looking at the long term, you're looking at sustainability, hopefully at the heart of what you're doing. It's not about one little change. It can be much bigger than that. You can be bold and you can be brave about it. And that's what we need everyone to be right now.
That is wonderful. I think we have a very rich session. We started discussing automotive, and we went all the way really how to build a sustainable 360-degree company. Riversimple is an example. I will be glad to keep in touch and discuss even maybe in 1 year where your journey has taken you. So I want to thank you so much, Julia, for being with us and for this disruptive and wonderful challenge that you are taking up for yourself and your company. So thank you so much, Julia. It was a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you, Sam.
Are you better off after this wonderful episode? We have learned a lot about how to do disruptive business model truly sustainable, because we have learned today that less sustainable is not yet sustainable. For the next episode, we will change continent, going to see how change makers are working towards a regenerative agriculture.